Hey, welcome to Strength Side. So this morning we are talking more about positioning and hip impingement. So a lot of us find ourselves in this cycle of when we do these big movements like squatting or deadlifting, we feel like our hips aren't really working that great. We may feel like we're getting hip impingement. Okay, so we go through this cycle of doing tons and tons of mobility, stretching, doing foam rolling, tissue work, just to gain a little bit of relief, and then it usually works its way back in there, and we just keep going through that cycle. So I want to show you guys a way that you can essentially gain some mobility in your joints just by being in a better position. Okay, so I'm going to show you a little test here that you can do on yourself, and this test kind of shows how much more range of motion you can have in your joints if you are in a good position. So if you lie flat down on the ground here, so one good indicator to tell if you are someone who gets a little overextended like I am is if when you lie down on the floor, if your rib cage arches up towards the ceiling, then there's a pretty good chance that that when you're standing and doing athletic movement that you're getting overextended and getting too much arch in your lower back, right? So what I'm going to show you here is just a quick little range of motion test when I'm in this bad position. So you can do this: flare your rib cage up, make sure that your lower back is popped off the ground a little bit, and if I bring my knee up into hip flexion, I run into impingement right about here. Okay, so check that out. We're maybe a little bit past 90 degrees, but right about at 90. Okay, now if I get myself in a good position, turn on my abs a little bit, make sure that that lower back is flat to the ground here. As you can see, I get a lot more hip flexion here, okay? Now we're up at, 120, something like that. So just by getting myself into a good position, my joint can move better. It can move how it should be able to move, right? And I can have that full range of motion here. Now the same thing happens with the hamstrings, okay? So if I arch up, flare the rib cage, when I bring my hamstring up, I run into this in range of motion right about here, okay? Way before 90. Now if I get myself in a good position, abs on, look how much range of motion I gain right there, right? Boom. Now we're 290, probably a little bit past, okay? So that's a test that you can do on yourself, and this is just to show if you get yourself in a better position, then you'll be able to use your joints the way that they should be able to use. Okay, so how does this relate to what you're doing? Well, let's talk about that. Okay, so let's see how these things can relate to your real life athletic movement that you're doing, right? Because we show you a test laying on the ground, you're like, okay, that's great. How does that apply to me? Well, this is how it applies to you. If you're overextended here, and you got your back super arched, and when you go to squat, the same thing as that hip flexion test, you're going to get to, maybe 90, maybe before 90, and you're going to hit that hip impingement, okay? And what's going to happen is you're going to have to reverse, and your pelvis is going to tuck under now, and you're going to get that dreaded butt wink that nobody wants, right? And then you're probably going to feel like you're really tight in the front of the hips, and a whole host of problems are going to come with that, okay? But if you can get yourself in a good position, like we always talk about, we want the abs turned on, we want the butt really, really squeezed. You can even posterior your tilt a little bit if that helps you stay in a better position. And now, you can squat down with no impingement all the way down to the ground, getting ATG now, and having no issues, okay? So that just allows you to gain more mobility and have a fuller range of motion at the hips. Now let's look at this hinge type movement that you're doing in your deadlift. So same thing. Now that it's more of that hamstring test, if I hinge forward in a bad position, I get to about my mid shin here, and I'm just blocked. I can't go any farther because my hamstrings are at their end range and they're not going to let me go farther because my butt isn't really working. So that's the only thing that's really supporting me, okay? So if I get myself in a good position, abs on, butt tight. Now when I hinge forward, boom, I'm all the way at the ground, right? I can almost go palms on the ground like I'm some type of yogi, okay? So you can see the implications of what happens when you're too overextended. You just lose a lot of range of motion, and then you start feeling like, oh, I have hip impingement, right? So I need to do a bunch more mobility things. Well, before you know, it's great to address mobility, it's great to stretch, it's great to do tissue work, but you're gonna be caught in that cycle unless you address the position that you're in that's causing you to have to do all these things, right? If you get yourself in a good position and you have efficient movement, then you have to do less and less tissue work and stretching because your muscles are functioning how they're supposed to function. Okay, guys, I hope that helps out. You know, I hope you can have some takeaways from this. Get yourself in a good position. You're gonna have a greater range of motion at the joints. If you have any questions, let me know. See you in the next video.